It is my distinct honor to introduce to the stage His Excellency Sarun Jadonsuwan, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of Thailand.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, at the outset, I wish to express Thailand's appreciation to the government of Vietnam for convening the ASEAN Future Forum 2026. The topic of this plenary session is very pertinent. The foundation of ASEAN's economic success are being tested by profound shifts in the global landscape, from intensifying strategic competition and supply chain reconfiguration to digital transformation and green transition. ASEAN's traditional development model has served our region well, built on export-oriented growth, competitive labor costs, and deep integration into the global economy. It has lifted millions out of poverty and transformed our region into one of the world's most dynamic regions. The challenge today is not that this model has failed, but the conditions that enable its success are changing and rapidly. Strategic competition is reshaping trade and investment patterns. The global economy has become more fragmented, technological disruption is accelerating, climate-related risks are growing, and many ASEAN countries, including Thailand, are being confronted with problems from aging populations, slow productivity growth, and the challenge to escape the middle-income trap. This calls for adaptation and transformation so that our economies continue to thrive in an increasingly uncertain world. From Thailand's perspective, ASEAN should focus on three strategic priorities: resilience, innovation and future readiness, and new forms of partnership. First, resilience must become a core objective of development. For decades, competitiveness and efficiency were the primary drivers of economic success in ASEAN. Today, resilience is equally important. Recent crises, from pandemics to supply chain bottlenecks and energy volatility, have exposed our vulnerabilities. Sustainable growth now requires not only the ability to compete, but also the capacity to anticipate, absorb, and adapt to shocks. For Thailand, this perspective is reflected in the sufficiency economy philosophy articulated by His Majesty King Phumthon Adunyadet the Great. Its principles of moderation, reasonableness, and self-immunity against uncertainties remain highly relevant and resonate well with current discussions on economic resilience and sustainable development. For ASEAN, building resilience also means maintaining open and predictable trade and investment flows while diversifying supply chains, strengthening food and energy security, and enhancing our collective capacity to respond to the crisis. Openness and resilience should be mutually reinforcing. Second, ASEAN must strengthen innovation and future readiness. While manufacturing and trade remain important foundations of our economies, future competitiveness will increasingly depend on our ability to create value through technology, innovation, and knowledge-based industries. This requires investment in digital infrastructure, innovation ecosystems, and regional initiatives, such as the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement. Equally important is investment in people. ASEAN must prioritize digital literacy, and upskilling, and lifelong learning, while ensuring that the benefits of technological process are broadly shared. For Thailand, these priorities are also reflected in our pursuit of accession to the Organization of Economic and Cooperation Development, or OECD, as a means to strengthen competitiveness, raise standards, and support sustainable long-term growth. Third, development today requires new forms of partnership. The increasingly complex challenges require ASEAN to rethink our approach to external partnerships. We must preserve strategic autonomy and policy space, diversify partnerships, and avoid excessive dependence on any single market, technology source, or geopolitical alignment. ASEAN's long-standing principles of openness and inclusivity remains highly relevant. Diversified partnerships will help strengthen our resilience while expanding opportunities for growth. Meanwhile, development cooperation should evolve beyond traditional donor-recipient models towards partnerships that respond to national needs and regional priorities, grounded in mutual belief, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. South-South and triangular cooperation offers practical pathway to advance this approach. ASEAN is well placed to promote such cooperation through ASEAN-led mechanisms such as the Initiative for ASEAN Integration. Distinguished participants, ASEAN's greatest strength has always been its ability to adapt while remaining united, outward-looking, and open to cooperation with all partners. Many elements of our traditional development approach remain valid. Openness, regional integration, competitiveness will continue to matter, but they are no longer sufficient on their own. ASEAN must complement these strengths with greater resilience, stronger innovation capacity, and more diversified partnerships. These priorities are consistent with the aspirations of ASEAN Community Vision 2045. We need to translate that vision into concrete outcomes that improve the lives and opportunities for our people. If we can do so, ASEAN will not merely adapt to change, we will also help shape it. Thank you for your kind attention.
A huge thank you to His Excellency Sarun Jaronsuwan, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, for setting the bar so high for our partnership and for such an inspiring speech. Ladies and gentlemen, and now it is my distinct honor to invite to the stage Her Excellency Professor Mari Pangastu, former Indonesia Trade Minister, Special Envoy of the President of Indonesia for International Trade and Multilateral Cooperation.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to come to my first AFF, and what a wonderful forum this has been, and I really hope that this forum can provide really good input and recommendations to ASEAN. So on the topic that we have today about how we should be having development models amid global transformations, I just wanted to reflect on where we are, that we are more than halfway through this decade, and it has really shown to us that this is very different from all the preceding decades we have experienced. We are potentially seeing really a huge realignment in the global order. We are not just seeing cyclical changes, but we are seeing structural changes which are not going to go away to going back to anything that is the normal that we are used to. We are going towards really a global transformation driven by at least 5 different forces. A shifting world order where US primacy is being contested, but no single successor has emerged. We are in a multipolar world, and we are also seeing the retreat from multilateralism and rules-based order. Second, we are seeing persistent health vulnerabilities and aging populations. Third, the energy transition compounded by energy crisis. Fourth, accelerating climate impacts, especially in Southeast Asia. And of course, what is top of mind everywhere, the digital and technological and AI revolution, which is causing opportunities for increasing productivity, but also disruptions. And these 5 forces are not operating separately, obviously. They converge, they demand a different kind of development model. And this is the second crisis that President Tolam has identified, the crisis of an international, the crisis of development model. We need a new development model. The report that I was involved in last year as the ASEAN Geoeconomics Task Force was entitled, "This Time is Different." And that's why, I was saying earlier that the time is different. We are not in a time where we have ever been before. And ASEAN's agency is important in shaping the new global agenda. And I wanted to emphasize the word agency. ASEAN is not a passive recipient of great power decisions. We have the scale, the positioning, and the track record to shape outcomes. But we need a model fit for the world we are entering, not the one we are leaving. And I will make 4 points and 4 recommendations. So first point, what still works and what does not? I think the core logic of ASEAN development and integration into global trade was about openness, about attracting foreign direct investment and comparative advantage in low-cost and labor-intensive manufacturing. We all know about the creation of production networks going from Japan and then later to Taiwan, Korea, and East Asia, and then coming down to Southeast Asia. Production networks, flying geese. I see Professor Hiro Kawai there. This was what happened in the 90s, 80s and 90s. And this is really contributed to the first industrial takeoff of Southeast Asia. And it was predicated on trade openness, macroeconomic stability, investment and in infrastructure, and a very conducive multilateral rules-based trading system that we faced at the time. This is still relevant, but what is breaking down is the assumption that these elements alone are sufficient. 3 structural shifts have changed the game. Geo-economic fragmentation. We all ASEAN has been facing U.S. trade policy and shifts in U.S. trade policy from blunt tariffs to legalistic instruments such as the Section 301s. We are all facing that currently. And for instance, Vietnam, our host country, just got another additional 301 based on IP on the 29th of May. And because our trade to GDP ratio is high, it means that this fragmentation is existential. It's not a marginal issue. It's a very existential issue for us. Second, technological disruption. AI and advanced semiconductors and digital infrastructure are shaping which sectors drive productivity growth. And countries that do not build capacity in these areas or are able to manage the different challenges to it will not be part of the global supply chain. And finally, the green transition is imperative. Being sustainable is now being part of being competitive. It's not just about fulfilling your Paris climate agreement. It is about your own country's growth and development as well as the ability to compete. Second point, the middle income trap is a complexity trap. We have roughly, Indonesia's experience is instructive in this case. We have about 5%, we have grown at about 5% for the last 2 decades. Consistent, but not sufficient to really become a middle income trap and get out of our middle income trap. Malaysia and Thailand are ahead, and the answer is economic complexity. Vietnam, which started lower, has actually, in the last 2 decades, really grown very much in terms of developing the economic complexity in their industrial structure. And according to what we know from literature and studies, including from Professor Lee, who we will hear from later, there are 3 things that get us out of the middle income trap. The breadth and sophistication of the export basket, the depth of domestic supply chain linkages from FDI, and the quality of human capital. I mean, Indonesia is kind of blessed and cursed because we have commodities, and that has actually probably slowed down our diversification of exports. ASEAN's traditional model of attracting FDI for assembly and extraction that worked in the past and will continue to be part of our industrial development, but we must now attract FDI that brings technology transfer, deepen the domestic supply base, and create skilled employment. And this will require active industrial policy. And perhaps I'm not quite sure what the right word for is, but industrial policy, which used to be politically incorrect to discuss, is really now back. But how do we do that in a way which is getting the optimal results and not just picking winners? And investing in the ecosystem that that enable you to have industrial policy work, energy skills, infrastructure, and standards that allow firms to move up the value chain. I think Professor Lee is going to talk more about that. The third point is strategic autonomy and integration are not contradictions. They are elements. Regional integration is ASEAN's strategic autonomy. Whether it's RCEP, CPTPP, or deepening our own ASEAN agreements, whether it's DEFA or ARTIGA, and all the bilateral agreements we have, these are not concessions to globalization. They are instruments through which ASEAN builds a market of 680 million people and combined GDP of US 4.2 trillion that is attractive to all our partners, we hope. So no one pressures a market that they need access to. This is should be the basic strength of ASEAN. And this is really where we talked about the importance of full ASEAN implementation of the agreements, full implementation of RCEP. And if we do that right, we can actually offset any negative impact from the downside of what's happening with our access to the US markets. And the strategic autonomy that is domestic is also important. Integration must be accompanied by domestic resilience. We do need to focus on diversified energy supply, food security, digital infrastructure, and social safety nets that absorb adjustment costs. And we also need to do the domestic reforms, structural reforms that will make us individually as countries attractive for investments and going up the value chain. So these are the 4 points in terms of the context that we are facing. And let me close now with what does the next development model require? There are 5 priorities. First, accelerate RCEP implementation and the RCP General Review, which is due in 2027. Prioritize full accumulation of rules of origin, starting with strategic sectors such as semiconductors, EVs, critical minerals. This is the single highest return policy action available. This is a quick win that can really bring us to that higher value added, more economic complexity, and hopefully the development of regional, competitive, as well as secured and resilient regional supply chains. And these priorities are hopefully going to be part of the recommendations that AFF can also provide to ASEAN. Second, invest in economic complexity, not just growth. Industrial policy should target upgrading the export basket. For Indonesia, we have downstreaming policies that go from raw materials to processed goods, but how do we go further downstream in the supply chain? Third, build human capital for the technologies that matter. AI, renewable energy, advanced manufacturing, and digital financial all require skills that ASEAN's education systems are not yet producing at scale. Joint ASEAN vocational training programs, cross-border scholarship exchanges in STEM, and industry-linked apprenticeships should be priorities. Fourth, make the green transition a development strategy. Climate goals and development should not be seen as trade-offs. You can achieve both if you really have a green economic strategy. And it is going to make you more competitive. It is also going to make you develop new industries, new green industries. And there are many areas we need to address within the green economy sectors, as well as creation of carbon markets. Fifth, mainstream geo-economic thinking across all ASEAN pillars. The joint ASEAN Foreign and Economic Ministers meeting that was proposed by the ASEAN Geo-Economics Task Force last year has been institutionalized since last year. And really, this is something that's very key in the ASEAN cross-pillar and the way ASEAN mechanisms need to happen, because development models cannot be designed in economic silos when trade, technology, and security are inseparable. They are not separable anymore. The ASEAN Summit should endorse annually these assessments as a standing input into the ASEAN decision-making. The development models that powered ASEAN's rise were built for a world of open trade, stable rules, and abundant cheap labor. The world has changed, is going to continue to change. The next model must be built on complexity, resilience, and integration. And it must be built together with all of us in ASEAN, both government and all the stakeholders in this room, businesses, the ones who, the think tanks who hopefully not just think, but also think concretely in ways that can really help our processes, and all the stakeholders in the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency Professor Mari Pangestu, for your dedication, for sharing your invaluable insights, highlighting the importance of ASEAN, what works and what does not work as we navigate the path ahead. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to officially open the plenary session 5, centered around development models in the face of global transformations. To lead this important session, we are honored to hand over the floor to our moderator. Please welcome Mr. Nguyễn Hoa Cương, Vice President of the Central Institute for Economic Management. We are also deeply honored to introduce our distinguished speakers joining the discussion today. Please welcome Mr. Srini Nagarajan, Managing Director and Head of Asia, British International Investment. And please welcome Professor Yi Kun from Seoul National University. Dr. Võ Trí Thành, former Vice President of the Central Institute for Economic Management. And Professor Masahiro Kawai, Professor Emeritus at the University of Tokyo. Please join me in welcoming our moderator and speakers with a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, and we shall now proceed with plenary session 5.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting me and also our very esteemed delegates here to be on a very special panel today. I would like to say, to express our high appreciation for our two lead speakers who have actually very enlightening introductory speech, and also lead a lot of issues that are to be raised, to be discussed among us, and also for all of us to raise very interesting questions later on. As you will see that our session will become with the presentation from the panelists today. I would like to maybe make a very short introduction on the panelists. First of all, I would like to introduce Professor Leo Kohn from Seoul National University. He's a distinguished professor of Chung Ang University in Seoul National University Emeritus. I would like to introduce Professor Masahiro Kawai, University of Tokyo. He's a professor emeritus, University of Tokyo, and also senior fellow of Policy Research Institute of Japan's Finance Ministry. I would like to introduce Dr. Võ Trí Thành, the president of the Institute for Brand and Competitiveness Strategy from Vietnam. He also is the vice president of Central Institute for Economic Management, and also Mr. Srini Nagarajan, managing director for Asia on British International Investment. Panelists, distinguished guests, thank you very much for being here today. So first of all, I would like to invite each of you to make maybe a short presentation, since you also have not a very long time, and also we would like to spare time for questions. So I'd like to kindly request you to make your presentation of less than or no more than 8 minutes. Thank you. First of all, Professor Lee Kyun on the key development models, worldwide success and limitation. The floor is yours.
I'm Kun from South Korea. I'll talk about industrial policy because it is the key component of whatever new models of development. Okay, so I'll talk about experience in East Asia. Okay. Is it working? Oops. So, industrial policies to change the structure of your economy by various intervention by government, and it has been revived recently due to the rise of China and the global financial crisis and others. One important book was by Stiglitz and Justin Lin about industrial policy revolution. But most recently this year, just 1 month ago, World Bank has a big report about industrial policies. So they now fully officially endorsed various industrial policies, not only from import tariff, but also export subsidy, export ban, using Indonesia example. Okay, so it's now fully legitimized by the World Bank and IMF too. Okay? So the one reason we need to have some initial conclusion is that it shows the cost curve of income. Unless you have a certain volume, so you need to enter consumer goods, but very low tariff for capital goods which going to import anyway. I call asymmetric tariff. EV transition in South Asia, this shows Vietnam has highest ratio of EV transition due to being fast. Okay, and if you look at the share by local production versus imported car, Vietnam shows highest ratio of local production, whereas Indonesia, Thailand, all by imported car. Okay. Tariff. Otherwise, they cannot. Okay. There are other factors for success. Okay. Whereas in Indonesia, Thailand, there was an inconsistency in their policy. Their favor given to not only local produced cars but also imported cars. So their share by imported cars keep rising in those countries. This shows overall share in manufacturing market in South Asia, all rise of Chinese shares. Chinese all penetrating manufacturing market in Indonesia, Thailand, whatever countries. Unless you have a certain protection, you cannot survive against Chinese manufacturing import. Okay. Second, I'll talk about bring up national champions or big businesses. That's why Korea emphasis on big business rather than SME. Tens of thousands of SME cannot take you to the high income status. You got to have big businesses or national champions. National champion is okay as long as it is subject to world market discipline, export market. Okay, so this is how Korea caught up Japan in terms of productivity, because Korea's brought up big national champions. They are the leading in terms of innovation and so on. Okay? So in the coffee sector in Vietnam, we have two national champions, Vina Cafe and Legend, which is sitting beyond this corridor. I got coffee gift from Legend in my hotel room. And they are the ones who are leading Vietnam transition in processed branded coffee. Whereas many SME FDI companies all focus on unprocessed coffee export. That's not enough to go beyond middle income trap. You got to have your branded coffee. This shows the rising share of Vietnam exporting processed coffee, led by this Vina Cafe and Legend. Okay? Whereas globally, Brazil, Colombia, Vietnam are top 3 countries in the world in coffee production, but all unprocessed coffee export. Whereas export of processed coffee, branded coffee, all dominated by advanced countries like Italy, Germany, and Switzerland. There are big asymmetry in coffee GBC. South only doing exporting unprocessed coffee, North doing all exporting processed coffee. You got to change this asymmetry. You need a big champion, big national champion to lead this transition. And because other countries are charging tariff against your coffee export, zero tariff for unprocessed coffee, but high tariff for processed coffee export from global south. So you got to have even form coffee cartel like OPEC in oil, unless rich country abroad stop charging tariff against your coffee export. This is nonsense.
Professor Lee Kuan, could you please just quick up exciting?
Lastly,
almost running out of time.
Okay, 2 minutes. I talk about the export ban subsidy in downstream in Indonesia and Malaysia, with the example of palm oil success in Malaysia, succeeded by Indonesia. Okay, so this shows success in Malaysia, switching from crude palm oil to processed palm export. It was done by industrial policies. First, export duties against export of unpressed palm oil, then nationalization of the takeover British plantation by London Stock Exchange. Malaysia used public money to vote out, take over British company in London Stock Exchange. That ended all the debate between UK and Malaysia.
Professor Lee Kuan,
Yeah,
I'm so
okay.
sorry.
2 minutes,
Almost
okay.
running out of
Okay.
time.
Then
Could you
it's
please-
succeeded by Indonesian cases. Similar success happening in Indonesia too. Finally, as you know, Indonesia is doing better in terms of the nickel export ban, that leading to growth of Indonesia's stainless steel export and further downstream in terms of EV battery situation. This is the key element in this policies. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Lee Kuan. Thank you very much, and sorry for interrupting because actually we still have many good presentations come ahead, and then I'm sure that you will come back to your presentation later by question. The next one, Professor Masaru Kawai from University of Tokyo. I think maybe for the each of the following presentation, please limit yourself to 7 minutes only.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this excellent forum. I would like to thank the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. Now, on crisis of development models, I just want to say that there is always a constant need for any country's development model to evolve over time in response to the country's economic growth and environmental or external changes. Now, development policy priorities also evolve. For example, once you achieve relatively high income from a very poor state of the economy, then your policy goals are going to change. Initially, you may focus on poverty reduction, but then you shift to inclusive growth, and then other higher objectives. The types of the source of growth is going to change as your economy grows from factor accumulation, initially utilizing labor, and then invest in capital, and then technology. The type of infrastructure is going to evolve. The type of infrastructure needed is going to evolve, starting from social and industrial infrastructure to digital infrastructure and then green infrastructure. The type of technology and human capital needed will have to evolve over time also. And the type of structural reform needed is going to evolve over time. So essentially, my point is that the development model of any country has to be adjusted constantly in response to various changes and evolve over time. Now, today, external environments have changed in a drastic way. President To Lam's excellent speech talked about the crisis in development models, reflecting stagnating globalization, geopolitical fragmentation and supply chain disruptions, and compounding threats of climate change and technology advancement. Now, here, geopolitical fragmentation and supply chain disruptions are adding really a new dimension. So some drastic adjustments to the development model would be needed, but this does not mean that ASEAN is going to need a new brand model. ASEAN has succeeded in making economic and social progress through outward orientation, as has been identified by Minister Mari Pangestu, mobilization of abundant labor, investing in social and industrial infrastructure, often supported by external assistance, attracting foreign direct investment and technology, and also utilizing pragmatic government intervention and a blend of state and market mechanisms, and a pursuit of regional economic integration, starting from AFTA, ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, to ASEAN Economic Community, and also learning from early successors' achievements, because ASEAN includes different types of countries at different stages of development. Now, ASEAN's outward orientation has been based on the notion that the free market will lead to each country's natural participation in the global and regional supply chains according to the country's factor endowments, technological capabilities, and comparative advantage. But this assumption, this notion, needs to be modified in a world of geopolitical fragmentation. Unilateral actions like tariffs and weaponization of interdependence, such as coercion and supply chain disruptions. Well, each country facing such challenges is encouraged to take several actions, expand domestic and regional demand, diversify trade partners and supply chains, and strengthen strategic autonomy and strategic indispensability. Strategic autonomy is a defensive type of approach to respond and mitigate external shocks. Strategic indispensability refers to more proactive action to create specific strengths for the country, to make the country essential and important for other countries. Now, from this perspective, the importance of further deepening ASEAN cooperation and integration is clear. This has been also mentioned by Minister Mari. ASEAN's dynamic growth and ASEAN's unity and centrality itself, these together are already putting ASEAN in a very powerful position. So other countries want to cooperate with ASEAN.
Thank you very much, Professor Maseiro. Thank you very much.
Okay, I wrap up.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you. If ASEAN becomes more united, more integrated, more cohesive, and more central, then its attractiveness is going to increase. So this is the way to strengthen strategic autonomy and strategic indispensability for ASEAN. And not only ASEAN, but making individual ASEAN members more resilient to external shocks. Now, finally, with an integrated ASEAN as a core, East Asia's economic architecture can drive the global economy and can complement global economic governance, which is now being shaken, in particular in the trade area. So RCEP, AEC, RCEP, CPTPP, these are quite important instruments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Masaru Kawai. I understand that you're trying your best, but however, still 2 more minutes than we expect. But however, we will come back to your presentation. Thank you.
Hello.
Next, Dr. Wachitang, please. Yes.
Thank you. Let me sit here in formal way, more friendly.
So you will have a minute. Thank you.
Okay. That's not easy for me to talk about development paradigm, development model. Just less than 7 minutes. But anyway, what I say, very much I rely on my observation over the last more 40 years of Doi Moi renovation in Vietnam and how Vietnam should move forward, right? What we think about a development paradigm, right? 3 things. The first one, that's about our dream, right? We need to have dreams, aspiration, vision, the target we set for to be achieved, right? In the 90s, the first, we focus more on economic growth, income, because we are very poor. And later on, we also emphasize on poverty reduction, sustainability of development, and over the last 15 years, we talk already, many speakers mentioned, we would like to see the resilient, inclusive, sustainable, and innovative development, right? So that's the first thing. We think about development paradigm. That's target, vision, and even our dreams. Second thing, there's development, there's a process. There's transition, right? There's even the big transformation. Nowadays, we talk about how we can move from the brown to green economy, from the linear economy to the circular economy, from the real economy to the real and digital economy, from the competition and market-led innovation to the innovation rely on how we can mobilize the resources, market, state, society, from the liberalization, integration. Vietnam very open, very liberalized. But now we need more, right? How to manage supply chains to make them more resilient and even to be, already Kawai mentioned, strategic autonomy in some, the so-called strategic sector, right? So that's on the second thing. The shift or the transformation, right? We need to change. Okay, but that's a process very challenging. I just take you two examples. One, if you look at the SDG, right, set by UN in 2015, more than 10 years ago, up to now, less than 20% of the SDG on the track to be achieved by 2030. So that means more than 80% of the SDG may be not achieved by 2030. Vietnam may be different case. We can achieve maybe 70%. Okay, anyway, very challenging. The second example, right? That's not, now we think about development in broad context, many dimensions, and American gas though, maybe no trade-off between the green transformation and economic growth, right? But anyway, how we can optimize, right, the multiple problem. That's not easy. High economic growth, lower emission, and social objective, equality, and many other issues, right? Not easy. Okay, and the third dimension aspect, when we think about development paradigm, that's about policy. How we can make transformation happen in smooth way. And another thing is also how we can achieve the target, our dream, right? So for three kind of policy group, that's we observe from our experience. The number one, whatever the case, you need to ensure the efficiency of resource allocation. But more than that, right? That's not just about resource allocation efficiency. You graduate over time. You need to give the people more choices, more opportunity to do business, right? If you look at the case Vietnam, three kind of the pillar for policy: macro stability, market reform, and integration. That's, basically give the people more choices, more opportunity. So the first policy group, that's about allocation of resources and opportunity, the choice, right? The second group, that's about institutional reform, right? We talk a lot about how we can streamline administration procedure, how we can reduce the burden, improve the business environment. That's okay, right? To make the lower transaction costs, to make the business lower cost in compliance with the regulation. But that's not enough. Two other things. Another one, institution for promoting innovation, right? And another thing, institution for distributing more equally the benefit from the reform, from the economic growth. And the third, the last but not least, the policy group. That's about how we can upgrade our capability, the nation capacity, and lay down the foundation for the breakthrough development, right? If we look at the case Vietnam now, just related about we try to develop strategic infrastructure, right, including energy, new energy, infrastructure, and also digital infrastructure. The second, already many speakers mentioned, that's our industrial policy, right? Strategic autonomy. The challenge is how we can make that less distorted and more compliant with our international commitment, right? That's not easy, but anyway, you have that one. And the third one, to change the mindset for thinking about national innovation system, NIS, right? With the enterprise in the center, not the state, not the institute, R&D, and university, but the center of national innovation system. And that's enterprise. Together with that, we try to develop ecosystem for innovation, for the startup. So in brief, if you look at the policy in Vietnam, that's about choice and capacity building. And my last minute, somewhat about ASEAN, right? We already have ASEAN Vision 2045. Everything, right? Inclusive, sustainable, innovative, action-oriented, everything, together with ASEAN Way. But I would like to pick up two salient features of ASEAN development, ASEAN community building. Number one, ASEAN is not just about liberalization, right?
Take your question, Could you please?
That's about connectivity and cooperation. And second, ASEAN not just about prosperity. ASEAN is about how to narrow development gap within the country and between the country. And we already have three pillars, right? At the center, AEC, I have one recommendation. That's the time ASEAN need to think about the fourth pillar. That's ASEAN Innovation Community. That's not easy, but we can begin with a starting point. We can have ASEAN Innovation Center, focus agriculture, creative industry, and energy. I think we need to think about that.
Thank you very much,
not just
Dr.
production base, but ASEAN as innovation hub. So we need the fourth community, ASEAN Innovation Community. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vajitang. I have to say I'm really sorry for cutting you all, but please understand that all what you say is very, very important. So please spare time for our guests and other guests to raise a question. Very important question to follow up with you. Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Srini Nagarajan, you are the only representative from private sector, but you only have 7 minutes. So please.
That puts an extra pressure on me. Thank you so much. It's a great privilege to be sitting amongst the very, very accomplished academicians here, and His Excellency Mari, who spoke earlier, was very, very topical. I don't want to repeat what the challenges we are going through. It feels as though we are living in a slightly more tribalized world today, gone back to the 1940s, what we were there before. So essentially, we got, that people said, we got geopolitical realignment, we got supply chain diversification, we got accelerating technological disruptions. And I think the conundrum in various countries in ASEAN is to maintain the economic growth, the GDP growth of X percentage. In Vietnam's case, the aspiration of 10%, and making sure that we are able to strike a balance between that. And I will focus on the emissions, which is a core part of what BII is. Introducing myself, I represent British International Investment, which is a part of the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. We are a global development financial institution, been in business for 75 years, seen cycles of investments over a period of time. ASEAN and South Asia are our two main geographies, apart from Africa, what we invest. So we invest British taxpayers' money in emerging markets. We are a part of the whole British International Investment Partners, which includes us, UK Export Finance, and it's got Department of Business and Trade, and it's got Garanco, and it also has something called Mobilist, which does more and more of the mobilization piece of it on a pre-IPO basis. Now, let me focus on the energy transition. The more I discuss with various countries in our ambition, I find this is an inflection point for countries to be more flexible in terms of their reforms and their norms. I think if we don't reform today, the ability for us to attain energy security and diversification of energy sources is going to be very hard. And I think most countries in emerging markets are recognizing this is an inflection point where the policy environment has to be a little bit more conducive in order that investors are able to invest more in these countries. What are investors looking for in most of our economies, really? As we go and speak, there are 4 things they are looking for. Number 1 is basically a conducive policy environment, which is more predictable. Second one is more predictable, a linear demand for infrastructure projects, which can then allow them to allocate the capital for certain economies. The third one is manpower and talent, which is abundantly available in ASEAN countries, including Vietnam. Fourth, and the most important thing, is fundamentally the track record of having made money. I think investors come when they see other investors having made money. That's very critical in our whole system, really. Now, the energy transition part of it is, I will break this into 3-4 things. One is about energy generation, which I'll talk about. Energy generation, the green energy generation today has become the lowest cost of renewable energy, the overall energy generation. It doesn't matter. The climate change is, of course, a very important component of it, but even taking one step ahead of climate change, the whole renewable energy generation has become extremely cheaper compared to many other conventional sources. Now, renewable energy has got the issue of intermittency. So storage has become very important. The cost of storage has come down substantially as well, and you can see battery storage costs coming further and further down with the various developments happening in different countries. And so I think energy with storage is becoming more and more important as far as renewable energy is concerned, both on the solar side and also on the wind side. Second important point is on the transmission side. Most countries lack grid infrastructure in ASEAN countries. So it's very critical that we strengthen the grid infrastructure. At BII, we have the ability to work with the government in order where we are able to do the last mile linking of the grid infrastructure intrastate and interstate as well, inter-provinces as well. So the ASEAN grid conversation is a very important conversation, but if you don't link the last mile between the various states and the provinces, we're never going to achieve ASEAN grid. So privatization of the last mile is something which the government should definitely work on, because it has successfully worked in other emerging markets, which we have successfully delivered the development impact and also returns to investors. So transmission is if you don't strengthen grid infrastructure, there is no transition if you don't achieve transition, So transmission and strengthening grid infrastructure is very important. And if you can provide renewable energy with storage, transmission gets that much more easier because intermittency is not a problem. The third area is EV and EV infrastructure. Professors here talked about it, really. On the EV and EV infrastructure side, we can talk about manufacturing, battery swapping, charging stations, EV financing. Every aspect is important, the whole value chain. At BII, we cover the whole value chain, fundamentally. And the last bit I just wanted to talk about is on the waste to energy. The waste energy is in emerging markets, because of the quality of the waste we have, has always been a little bit of a challenge. But in most economies, this technology is gradually settling down. We can't bring in the Western technologies and put it in emerging markets, both on the municipal waste side and the agricultural waste as well. But we are refining this more and more in BII, and I think we have now got into models. The final few points I want to leave here with, that institutions like us and many others have got a fundamental goal of private capital mobilization. Now, we are the catalytic factor of bringing in that initial amount of capital where we are willing to take the risks. On the back of us, private investors can come in further and further. Our connect within the world, within the developed OECD markets, both in the West and in Asia, including Japan, is about our ability to have put in the initial capital, take the development and construction risks, have the proof of concept, and get commercial investors to come on our back. That's what we do as a development institution. And the second important thing is the UK government is supporting the Vietnamese government on the JET-P program. So the projects which the more and more commercial investors they're able to attract to the JET-P project, the more success we will achieve and sustainability over a period of time. Then it will have continued interest. So I think part of our reason why we work with the ecosystem is also to work with the UK government and the FCDO. We are a part of them in terms of supporting the whole JET-P program. The third important part is institutions like us have a dual mandate. One is inclusion, other one is sustainability. We can't forget certain sections of society because climate change affects the rich people and the poorer people, really. It's very critical that we are able to address all sections of society and we keep inclusion at the very center of what we do. For example, in the islands of Indonesia and Philippines, we got to have distributed generation solutions. So that is critical in the whole aspect of things. Finally, I just want to say here is, Asia has got different pools of capital. You've got catalytic capital, and it's got growth capital. There are people who are willing to come and take early stage risks and willing to do this. It's for governments to recognize and our ability to attract and tap into our talent. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Srini Nagarajan. I think you make it the shortest intervention so far by 7.5 minutes. How extraordinary you are, I must say. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think you all have made a very excellent intervention in our panel. And you see that actually you touch upon a lot of issues, including industrial policies, including the models, including the relation between the economic growth, economic development for Dr. Tang, and also from the point of view of the private sector. So I think you represent and provided quite a variety of the diversified intervention and ideas on how to think about how to keep the old model, how to actually consider the new pillar of the development models. So I would like to now come to a rather straight question for all of you. So how can actually, with all what you have just presented and all what you have listened to everyone say, how do you think that each ASEAN country can leapfrog into the new era of the development? How do you think that either we can make any institutional adjustment, or maybe we heighten the role of the human resource, or you, like Mr. Tang said about the ecosystem of innovation? How can we provide direct advice to our ASEAN countries? Please, for everyone, make it short within 3 minutes only. Now the time of frame is more difficult. So first, I would like to invite Professor Lee Kyung. Yes.
So the question is how to achieve leapfrogging. And as I briefly show in the graph, the leapfrogging means that latecomers doing something new ahead of incumbent. For example, Korea entered digital technology-based product ahead of Japan, who are strong in analog technology. So leapfrogging can happen when there is time for paradigm shift, like from analog to digital. Nowadays, emergence of AI. So it's best time to try leapfrogging because latecomers didn't invest too much in old vintage technology. You are right. You don't have to wait. So it's best time to try leapfrogging, but you got to manage risk. Every leapfrogging involves risk. For example, when you try new technology, there not be the market. So you're making losses. Tesla making losses for 7 years, only recently making profit. Same in semiconductor in Samsung. They are making losses for 7 years. So leapfrogging comes with risk. This leads to have a protection by government in industrial policies or big venture capital like a Tesla case and so on. So without government support or big venture capital, leapfrogging effort might fail. So it's best time to try leapfrogging, but you got to manage risk in terms of mobilizing public resources around the world.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Lee Kyung. So technology, resources, and risk, those are the factors that every government needs to consider. Thank you. Professor Masahiro Kawai, yes.
Okay. Well, leapfrogging is not always easy. The development process is a continuing process. So each country has to find its own strength, depending on its capacities based on human capital and domestic industrial base. So each country has to constantly watch other successful countries that have made a lot of progress, and then emulate what the successors have done. This is what's been happening in East Asia, emulating others' successes. I believe Korea has made a great success, and many ASEAN countries are looking at Korea, for example. The common denominator is that human capital development and institutional reform to support progress, and of course outward orientation, which is a feature of Asian countries. I want to make one comment on industrial policy, if it's okay. Industrial policy, I think, is needed given the global environment. But if each country pursues its own industrial policy within ASEAN, then there may be a problem. Take a look at China, which has been very successful in developing the manufacturing sector and industrial power. Many different provinces have their own industrial policies, and they have been competing with each other. And domestically, the degree of competition is very intense. And the result is that overcapacity in various sectors, solar panels, EVs, steel production, and so forth. There has been a lack of central coordination in China. Now, we do not want to see that in ASEAN. Industrial policy is recommended, but a coordinated approach within ASEAN would be needed. That's the way to promote the next stage of industrialization.
Thank you very much, Professor Masahiro Kawai. I think you have pointed out very correctly about the human resource development, also the institutional capacity. And most importantly, but not least, that will be the central coordination to make sure that all efforts put into policy, especially to this case you mentioned about the industrial policy, must be well coordinated. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to reach a highest efficiency. Thank you. Dr. Wachitang, the floor is yours.
Yes, I agree. Leapfrogging, very challenges. Few countries in the world can overcome the middle income trap, right? But why we now think we can have leapfrogging? Even in the case of Vietnam or many other ASEAN countries, the thing changes, right? Before we think just about how we can catch up with the developed country, narrow development gap. But now in many dimensions, we can go together, right? With the new industrial policy 4.0 and digital transformation, right? So in the case of Vietnam, I think maybe apply for many other countries. We have the so-called feedback strategy, What we mean by that? That means we continue to develop our traditional sector, right? Maybe labor intensive, agriculture, manufacturing, whatever, right? Export oriented. But now, if you can put the data on the production function, if you can have a good digital transformation, you can improve a lot productivity. You can change the way of production. You have the new platform for doing business, right? In that sense, somehow leapfrogging. So that's why in the case Vietnam, we set the target, digital economy can contribute 30% of the GDP by 2030. That's not just about the number, but about the speed, about the spillover of the digital transformation into the whole different sector, into the whole economy. So that's one thing. But in the case of Vietnam, we have advantage in that sense, right? Human resources, many good in mathematics, good in the AI development, right? So that's, and not just Vietnam, I think many other ASEAN countries. So that's not just about how we can overcome the middle income trap, but we have to be more confident in the way we can achieve the target we set, and in the way we can overcome the middle income trap.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thanh. Middle income trap, technology, AI, new things. There are so many things need to be considered in terms of how to integrating what the target we set and also what the reality and how we can implement in the reality. Thank you. And finally, Mr. Srini, how do you think about what will be the way for private sector to see it, to make our country, ASEAN country, can leapfrog?
I mean, I look at it through an investor lens here. That's what I'm familiar with. Fundamentally, what I find surprising in ASEAN is the lack of venture capital and private equity environment. You look at how emerging markets are leapfrogged, China, India, and other markets, is through a very vibrant venture capital and private equity environment. What that does to economies, it creates a fantastic layer of first-generation entrepreneurs. We cannot depend on the old entrepreneurs who have a critical role to play in economies, but they also have a limitation to how much they can do, right? We need the next breed of entrepreneurs. But I find it very surprising ASEAN has. So second point is for encouraging a vibrant venture capital and private equity environment, you need to reform capital markets. Because if they don't find exits, they won't come. It's very simple. So capital market reforms of listing small and medium enterprises and faster listing standards of large enterprises with adequate foreign participation is very important to discover the right value. Some economies don't allow foreign investors to come at such level. But you won't never discover the right value for your stock. And you always feel it's overpriced. So I think if you do the capital market reforms, that is very critical. Third one is in terms of the debt market, really. We should stop depending on the banks totally. Banks have got a limitation. They have sector exposures, single-party exposures. So the alternative capital market reforms, the debt market reforms through public markets is very important. You talk about bonds, you talk about sustainability-linked bonds, or InvITs for infrastructure, etc. That is important. The final point what I will make here is, in British International Investment, we talk about South-South cooperation, right? Every country in emerging market need not experiment everything. They can learn from the other markets like China and India, what they have or Japan, what they have gone through already, Korea. So these markets have been through this journey. So leapfrogging and learning from them is important. What I find ASEAN markets lacking is the learnings from other markets on the South-South cooperation on a more cooperative basis. What are those mistakes we should not do? Yeah,
That's what I would say. Thank you very much. I think that's also very important, interesting point of view to see that the role of the capital market as well as the learning from the other country in South-South corridor as well in many other regional linkage initiatives. I think thank you very much all the panelists for providing your insight into this issue. So I see the first round, I request you to have presentation with less than 7 minutes, which is very challenging. In the second round, I requested you to actually to propose something for leapfrogging, which is also very, very challenging. Before I come to the third final challenge for you all, I will stop for a while and open the floor for the question from our audience. I would like to, invite to have a question from audience. Please, organizer, be ready for microphone. Could you please you introduce yourself and make your question straight to the question? Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. Susanna Patton from...
Can you turn on the mic? Thank you. Could you please, organizer, please make sure the mic works well. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Susanna Patton from RMIT. Professor Kawai has already touched on the challenges posed by China's excess capacity in the so-called new three of EVs, solar panels and battery technologies. I'd be interested in views from the other panellists about the extent to which China's growing dominance in these sectors challenges ASEAN's development model. Thank
you. I'm not quite sure I get the question right, but I think maybe Dr. Tang. Okay. Dr. Tang and Professor Mr. Kawai, will you be ready to provide feedback to that questions? Oh, yes. Oh, sure, yeah. I think maybe, let's have a few more questions. And please make sure that you make the question very clear and very straight to the point. Please, lady on the right.
Okay, so my name is Duk and I come from DAV. And I have a question for Mr. Lee Kun from Seoul National University. That we all know chaebol plays a very important role in the economic takeoff in South Korea. But they are also criticized because they also created, less competitions among SMEs or small or medium enterprise or startups, and also
I think your question is already clear. Thank you. Please don't make the video too long.
What ASEAN countries and Vietnam learns from chaebols without reproducing such challenges? Thank you.
Thank you. I think the lady on the right. I think I intended to invite her first, please. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I would like to ask Professor Masahiro-san, how can ASEAN support the development of key niche in global supply and product chains among its members? Would like to seek your advice on this. So, development of key niche in global supplies and product chains. Thank you.
I think, can you maybe make your question clearer? I don't think any of us here quite have a clear idea on what the question was. Can you make the question really, really clear, please?
Professor Masahiro-san talked about the development of strategic indispensability. I just wanted to ask, how do we develop strategic indispensability, and how can ASEAN support the development of that niche in global supply and product chains among its members? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next question, please. Gentleman on this one, yes.
Good afternoon, and thank you again for the opportunity.
I invite gentlemen, okay, here. Could you please stand up? Yes, you. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks so much. I'll be as fast as possible. On the question of new industrial policy, going back to Lyndon Stiglitz and then today, for a large number of countries and a large number of economists, political economists, we remember the old industrial policies, yes, having significant successes, but also coming with the very negative side of significant corruption, particularly for countries in this region that already have remarkable problems with corruption. How should we view industrial policy from that perspective? Are we still able, is the new industrial policy come up with alternative model structures that can mitigate that? Or where do we go? Because a lot of us have a history of thinking of industrial policy and thinking industrial policy means opportunities for corruption. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it will be for you. Yeah. I think maybe one or two more questions. Now I think maybe the one from very far left corner at the back. Yeah, the one who waved the hand. Yes, please.
So I'm really thankful for your valuable and insightful sharing. So as Dr. Wu Qitang has deepened the ASEAN mission of narrowing the development gap between the countries, and also professional Kawai also said about the unity of our region is the attractiveness. So I believe that we need to deepen the integration in the region. But I also see that we are stepping into an era of digital economy. So that mission also gives us a mission that we need to have a policy realignment, like the same governance data framework. But that's also give us a mission that how could we do that, the policy or realignment, but also ensure that no country is left behind. So that's my question.
Thank you. I think that's really sufficient by now. We have already 5 questions, and there was very little time left. So I'd like to invite Professor Leo Keon first. I think you're on the first question.
Thank you.
And maybe the second question too.
I have 2 questions. First about JEBLs. Second about failure or success of industrial policies. For JEBL, this is about role of big business in economic growth by latecomers who used to criticize big business for corruption and so on. Now World Bank last year report on middle-income trap have a different view. They now talk about positive side of big businesses. Look at you know what? I used to say growing SME is okay, but one matter is how to scale up them quickly into big businesses. Without big business, you cannot go into high income status if you count the number of Fortune 500 companies. So SMEs, they are growing under umbrella of big businesses. Under Samsung, there are thousands of SMEs startup growing under Samsung. Same in China, and under the Tencent, there are a couple of hundred companies growing under umbrella of Tencent. Big tech company, US says Google, Amazon, Facebook. Korea, Japan has only 2 countries in the world who has a counterpart Google, Amazon, Facebook. Korea has a Naver as a counterpart Google. And so who created this company, Naver? It's created by a former Samsung employee. Yeah. This is typical the Silicon Valley model. Big business, company, some people quit from big business, they create a company, startup, then they acquire by again big businesses. India has producing many startups, but many of them acquired by Google, a US company. It's brain drain. You got to have your domestic big businesses so that your startup remain in your countries. Okay? Of course, there are problem of corruption, but as long as you subject them to discipline for world market, your protection, privilege should be linked to your export performance. That's discipline come from. Otherwise, it's also corruption. It's up to your political leadership, how they committed to growth, that they can control corruption in big business. Korea sent all the CEO of Samsung Hyundai to jail. Not only president, we sent all the Samsung CEO Hyundai once upon a time into jail. You got to have them subject to legal discipline or world market discipline. So big business is better to have than nothing. Okay? 1,000 SME, look at Thailand, all company in Thailand, SMEs. That's the reason Thailand is middle income trap. Okay? China, India used to have the same number of Fortune 500 company. Around early 2000, China India had only 3 companies in global Fortune 500. Now, China has 135, same as US. India still have 8, less than Taiwan. That's the reason India's growth is much slower than China. India grow very good in generating startup, very poor in generating world-class big business. That's India's gap with China remain, getting better, getting bigger and bigger. You got to create big businesses. They are the who are leading. There are 2 Schumpeter's. Schumpeter 1 talk about startup and startup, but Schumpeter 2, when he got mature, he talk about lot of big businesses. They are the who have resources to do R&D. To risk-taking R&D, you got to have a scale and size. Okay. Now, what are the success and failure of industrial policies? There are 3 things to success. First, local ownership. Second, carrot. Third, discipline. Okay? So that's the reason Thailand's transition to EV is delayed, because their auto industry all dominated by Japanese FDI, and they are very slow in transitioning to EV. Whereas China very fast EV transition because all dominated by Chinese locally owned companies. Second, discipline. Look at the Malaysian failure of Proton. National ownership. Why fail? Because no discipline. Proton remain protected in local market only, not going into world market. That's second, discipline. And strong, third is carrot. You got to have a strong carrot, like the case of tariff for Binfast or Hyundai in the past. So without local ownership, carrot, discipline, policy will be failed. You got to all these 3 intact, plus political commitment and leadership. Industrial policy is politics. Without politics, you cannot support company giving favors. Otherwise, because you will be corrupt, you will be very weak. That's the case of the auto sector in Indonesia, EV transition. They are very weak in terms of the favor given to EV was given to not only locally produced car, but also imported car from abroad. So local producing car, which using nickel-based battery in Indonesia was not growing fast, because the same favor given to EV was given to imported car too. So that's a matter of political commitment. You got to be consistent, long enough to have a success. But in many cases, they stop in the middle without fully implementing industrial policies. It takes at least 10 years to make success. Samsung Semiconductor took 10 years to make a profit. Or Samsung Business Group close to bankrupt because of loss, accumulating loss from semiconductor. It took 7 years to Samsung have profit first time in semiconductors. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Lee Kyo. Professor Kasahiro Hawaii, please.
Okay. Industrial policy and what is called strategic autonomy and strategic indispensability, these 2, industrial policy and these strategies, have to be combined. Now, when I talked about the need for coordination of industrial policy within ASEAN, that's a way to avoid duplications and inefficiencies within ASEAN. I took an example from China, mentioning solar panels, EVs, steel, and so forth. Now, this coordination of industrial activity is a clear industrial policy. So if there is a risk of overproduction for a given economy, then the government may consider to discourage overproduction. This would be clearly needed for a big economy like China, and also ASEAN is now becoming big enough to be affecting the rest of the world if something goes wrong with overproduction within ASEAN. ASEAN is not in that stage, but there is a risk. Now, strategic indispensability is an activity to create sort of a choke point for other countries. China's rare earth is a clear choke point for the United States. The United States has a very large market and very attractive market, and if you are restricted from accessing the U.S. market, then that's a significant threat to you. So the U.S. market is itself, effective choke point. Now, for each country, Korea has a excellent digital technology. Taiwan has a excellent industry producing semiconductors. Japan has some niche areas where industrial parts and components would be produced. This kind of creation of choke point may be needed, and industrial policy can help. Now, corruption associated with industrial policy is a possibility, and in the past, perhaps too close a relationship between the business and the government may have led to some corruption. Now, the time is now changing, and people are demanding more transparency. Transparency is very important, and the quality of bureaucracy is also quite important. So bureaucratic reform, institutional reform would be needed. Industrial policy should not be targeting specific companies, specific firms, but industrial policy should be targeting specific sectors. Why don't I just stop my comment at this point?
Thank you, Professor Kawai. Dr. Vochitang, you will add up to the final.
Okay. I don't try to answer on what I think about on the question, but I pick some. One is industrial policy corruption. Not just industrial policy, any kind of public intervention, right, in the market, create a rent seeking kind of that. So how we can minimize or avoid that one, particularly in the new context. I talk a lot about industrial policy, strategic autonomy, One thing Mary Pangestu already mentioned, we try to avoiding picking winner policy. But now we say, we follow supporting the winner, right, through the competition, right? So say, if you're a big company, you can get some premium. But if not just because you're doing business well, but you have, spillover effect on the SME in terms of, transfer of skill, technology to SME, for example. So that's also related to the question, Chaebol in Korea and SME development in Taiwan, right? If you look at our resolution about private sector development, you can see different tier of private sector development. We talk about startup, we talk about household business, we talk about SME, we talk about big company, right? And environment to make them to to grow. Right? So I think there's one policy we need to think about. Another one, of course, there's accountability and transparency, right? Check and balance. Even, no secret, in Vietnam, in a one-party system, you think there's more difficult, but I think if you look at over the last 5 or 7 years, our movement against corruption, right? We can do decisively against the corruption. And last but not least, even for the strategic autonomy, even you support the winner, you can have the big firm. How we can avoid monopoly, oligopoly? One thing is you put them in the global economy. They can maybe they are monopoly in the internet in the country, but in international market they have to compete with many others. So international competition, there's a kind of the tax for the monopoly. Even they have that position inside the country. Okay, now the question of the integration, digital transformation and development gap, development divide, digital divide, left no one behind, right? I already mentioned about development model and paradigm and policy option. I think we talk about development divide, development gap, not for against market, right? So the first thing to do is ensure resource allocation efficiency. So to make the market, particularly production factor market, labor market, capital market, you mentioned, and technology market, natural resource market, function smoothly. But market is not enough. Distribution, social justice. So the role of the state here and cooperation among the ASEAN countries here, right? So that's why if you look at ASEAN, they have a 3 pillars. ASEAN economic community, concerned social community, and security community. And I suggest we can have 4th community, innovation, to move forward. Innovation community, right? So I think a kind of cooperation, complementary policy to support that one. But we're not against competition, we're not against market. We understand liberalization is about win-win gap, not zero-sum gap. But distribution not equally. Someone get 10%, someone get 90%.
Thank you very
that's why
much,
we need complementary policy, other policy, rather than just supporting the market function policy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our panelists, for providing very comprehensive and very precise questions. I understand that you all have so many more questions to raise, given the importance of the topic that we are talking about. But this is also a very important topic that, of course, our dialogue will not just stop here, but also for ongoing discussion on relevant issues. I think for the own contribution you have made for each panelist to this session, I would like to invite all the audience to give a round of applause to everyone here. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much once again, our brilliant moderator and our distinguished speakers for the plenary session 5. We have just listened to a very comprehensive discussion, and thank you once again for sharing your invaluable experience of wisdom and effectively shaping our understanding of future development models. So let's give our speakers a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And that's it for the plenary session 5. And we kindly request all the delegates to remain in their room because we are about to begin with a very important session this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 2 days, we have witnessed a powerful synergy of rich dialogues, conversations, and truly inspiring exchanges. And now it is time to bring all of this collective wisdom together for a meaningful close and a clear path forward ahead of us. And to lead this crucial final session, we'll be listening to an acknowledged speech, and I would like to kindly request all the delegates to remain in the ballroom so that we can commence this segment. I do hope that today is filled with a lot of inspiring dialogues and conversations that really acknowledge us the importance of ASEAN and also navigate us with a clear path ahead. All right, so before that, I invite all the delegates to enjoy some relaxing moments, just a little bit, in the ballroom before we start the closing segment. Yeah, you can remain in the ballroom, or you can have a really short break. And we kindly request all the delegates to bring the tea and refreshments into the ballroom so that in just a few minutes we will commence with the closing session. Thank you very much.